All right, guys, I'm back with another DC update. A lot has been going on, so I had to get this video out there. Um, but first, we're going to I actually have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to take you guys over to a bunch of different places. I've been I was just online grabbing, as much, stuff as I could. Um, so we're going to take a look at something that I grabbed from the Hollywood Reporter, and then we're going to take a look at another thing that I grabbed from comicbookmovie.com, and then I'm going to take you guys over to YouTube and actually do a side by side comparison of what um of what and then I'm going to take you guys over to YouTube, and I'm going to do a side by side comparison at what real hype looks like. Um, because the craziest thing happened at this past weekend at San Diego Comic Con. So I'm gonna so right now, um, but first, before I do any of that, I want to talk about the headline of this video. And that is James Gunn cannot stop lying about literally about anything, but more specifically, he really can't stop lying about the DCU and what is really going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to bring up some examples of this. Um, I'm going to bring up some examples of this, and that is I'm going to take you guys over to something that I grabbed from the Hollywood Reporter, and that is Teen Titans live action movie a go at DC Studios. And it says Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow writer Anna Nagara will write the screenplay. Now, before I um before I get further into this article, I want to point something out. I want to point something out, and I want to point something out because, and this comes from the Hollywood Reporter, and this was actually something that happened all the way back in March. Okay. Specifically March 15th, it was announced that Anna was going to do a Teen Titans movie for DC Studios. Now, she is the writer for DC Studios' upcoming Supergirl movie that's coming out next year. Now, what's crazy about this is James Gunn is claiming that this movie does not exist. And this is what James Gunn does. He announces something, he says that something is coming out, and then he'll turn around and he'll say that it's not true. This is what James Gunn does. It's who he is. And I'm going to take you guys over to Variety. Oops, sorry, not Variety. I'm going to take you guys over to comicbookmovie.com, and it says and it says update the script for DCU's Teen Titans movie doesn't exist at all according to James Gunn. And it says uh yep, so he was asked on X, Gunn was asked on X, um let me just pull this up. Okay. So it says here, um, screenplay about the Teen Titans, a group of young superheroes, including um, Nightwing, Cyborg, and Starfire, written by Anna Nagara, who also wrote Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Um, and uh, and this is interesting because it's because Peter Safran is saying something. Peter Safran is saying something literally completely different from what James Gunn is saying, and it says the Supergirl. The script's not ready. The script's not ready yet, Safran said. I mean, I think we said that Anna Nagara is writing it. And then Gunn says we haven't, and then, and now Gunn is saying we haven't said that. Gunn said, no, I think it was out there. Safran said, I think it was out there. And then he said, it's out there, Gunn said. The implication be, the implication being they'd never officially confirmed it until now. It was something that Anna was really impassioned about. Uh, and she turned over an amazing script for us, he continued. Um, um, she's fiddling with that now, but definitely not a finished script yet. And now he's saying, I don't understand. We said the script's not finished. There. I asked Anna to move to Wonder Woman to finish that first, and she did. So, and then, but if you look at something that he said, um, if you look at something else that he said, um, yeah, yeah. So now he's saying, yeah. So now Gunn is pretty much saying, the Teen Titans script doesn't exist. So which is it, James Gunn? You know, this is what I mean when I say that James Gunn dances around everything that he says. Everything, that James Gunn says, literally anything that he says literally completely contradicts the other, because he'll say one thing and then he'll say another, and it's like, and then you have no idea, like what's actually true. So, and then we're going to look at something else that I grabbed from, and now I know I talked about this in another video, but I want to briefly bring up what the original plan was, what the original plan was for James Gunn's, um, DCU when the Chapter 1 slate was first announced. And I actually have a picture here. I actually have a picture here. Now, just as a reminder for anybody, for anybody who either, didn't watch, that video that I put out or forgot, what, what the slate was or whatever. I'm going to remind everybody here that when this slate was announced, there were 5 shows announced and 5 movies announced. Okay. Now, the movies, of course, were Superman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which has now been, which just recently got renamed, um, um, which recently just got renamed to just Supergirl, which is stupid because if you guys remember, when Gunn Superman was originally first announced, it was called Superman Legacy. But then James Gunn decided to call the movie, decided to rename the movie to just Superman. And as you guys can tell, he literally just did the same thing to Supergirl. So, I think it just, I think, I think this should show you, that James Gunn, literally just, literally can't come up with, an original idea to save his life. Um, but no, going back to, going back to, the DC slate. So the five movies were Superman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Batman Brave and the Bold, The Authority, and thing. And the five shows were Waller, Creature Commandos, Lanterns, Booster Gold, and Wonder Woman, Paradise Lost. Now let's look at again, let's recap and look at where these projects are now. Superman, of course, is now, out in theaters. Supergirl is coming out next year. Batman Brave and the Bold has no release date, and as far as I know, no script. Swamp Thing, I think it's pretty safe to say, is canceled because I did say in another video that director James Mangold, who was originally I think was originally supposed to direct and write the movie, actually came out and said that he doesn't want to take notes from James Gunn, and I don't blame him. So I think it's pretty safe to say, that that's canceled. And, and again, as a reminder, James Gunn only works with people who kiss his ass. That's who, that's who James Gunn is. And, The Authority, from what I understand, I remember seeing a report saying that The Authority was put on the back burner. And then the shows, Creature Commandos already ended. Waller, I think it's pretty safe to say, is canceled. In fact, a while back, I remember hearing that actress Viola Davis actually came out and said that she wants to join the MCU. So, whether or not, that'll happen, I have no idea. But, and then Lanterns is coming out next year. I will be doing a video on that at some point because because I literally have zero faith in how that show is going to turn out. And then we literally know next to nothing about Wonder Woman, Paradise Lost. Though from what I understand, James Gunn has confirmed that a Wonder Woman movie is a priority right now. Though another thing to keep in mind, what James Gunn says and what James Gunn does are two totally different things. And I cannot stress this enough on people. There are so many people out there who don't understand this concept. And this is why I make these videos. I've told you guys here, I have told you guys here, on this channel, time and time again, I don't lie. I don't, when I say something is a rumor, I will like if something is a rumor, I will say it's a rumor. If something is a fact, I will say, this is a fact. Here's my source, blah, blah, blah. I keep it very, very real on this channel. And that is, and at the end of the day, that is my goal here, is just, to tell it like it is, to keep it real, and and point things out, how I see them. And then we're going to look at, and then I'm actually going to take you guys over to YouTube and talk about something that actually happened this past weekend at the San Diego Comic-Con. So here we are on YouTube, and I'm going to show you guys a side-by-side comparison at what real comic book hype looks like. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys, this clip, and then I'm going to talk about it. Okay, now notice how it took John Cena standing up, at the panel to get everybody else involved. That is very, very, very creepy. Because if you look at, what I just showed you, notice how, everybody, everybody, that was sitting with Gunn was applauding, right? But it took John Cena standing up for everybody else to join in. Those types of things do not happen with these, with these types of projects. And I'm going to show you now. Let's compare this to the year at San Diego Comic-Con when Batman versus Superman was announced. Let's look at the difference. Let's look at the difference, because it is literally night and day. I'm just going to pause this for 1 second, but look at, but also, look at the audience for this, for this panel. Look at the audience for this panel. Compare this to, to the Peacemaker, panel that I just showed you guys. Now, please tell me that you guys see the massive difference of those two clips. Notice how everybody, notice how everybody at that panel, at the BVS panel that year was completely losing their minds over this announcement. Guys, this, I couldn't, literally, like I couldn't falsify any of this if I sat down and tried. These are the facts. This is how it is. These are the facts. This is how it is. And you can totally tell that in the two videos that that I just played for you guys, you can totally tell which one of the two got people more excited. It's just a fact. It's how it is. And something else that I would like to bring up is something else that I would like to bring up is something else that I would like to bring up is something else I would like to bring up is I want to go back to the Teen Titans thing for a minute. Now, plans, yes, plans, can obviously change. Plans for whatever, yes, can obviously change, right? But Gunn, the difference between that and James Gunn, one of the things that he loves to do is quote unquote change his mind, which he has a habit of doing a lot. And for him to claim that this Teen Titans movie doesn't exist, when the Hollywood Reporter came out and said, yes, this is happening, something tells me it's just it's very, very sketchy to me. There are too many things that just don't add up. Remember, guys, this is the same guy that said, I didn't fire Henry Cavill. He was never cast. And you and I both know that is not the case. He claimed, Henry Cavill was never cast, yet his cameo was still, signed off by, his cameo in Black Adam was signed off by the studio. And in 1 minute, 1 minute he claims, that Cavill was never cast. He was just, told to announce, his return by the studio. And then, and then he tried to claim, oh yeah, and then he tried to claim, oh yeah, I feel really, really bad for the guy, this poor man, yada, yada, yada. It's like, make it make sense. This is the type of stuff that I'm talking about when I say that James Gunn dances around what he says. He does not tell the truth. He never will. It's who he is. It's who he is. It's what he does. And the video that I did, I think it might have been a week ago now, talking about, I did a video, talking about how James Gunn was supposedly mourning, the loss of Henry Cavill's Superman. And why, and why that whole thing is just absolutely ridiculous. Because remember, you have 1 minute of him saying, "Oh yeah, I didn't fire him. He was never cast. He was just, told to announce his return, by the studio." And then you have the next minute of him coming out and saying, "Oh, this poor guy." So which is it? You see what do you see what I'm getting at when I say that he talks out of both ends? You know, it's like, it's like, I mean, I don't do that. I don't do that. I wouldn't, that's not, that's not the type of stuff I want to build this channel around. I built this channel around honesty. That is, that is why I created this channel. So I could give you guys the news, tell it like it is, and call it and call it out how I see it. It's that simple. And another thing I want to bring up, this is from actually, no, this isn't that old, but this is from Variety. And it says David Cornsweet would ask one question too many on Superman set and not take it personally when James Gunn said, "Shut the fuck up." Some actors are sensitive. David's not that way. Now, and this should show you guys what a narcissist, James Gunn is, because actors don't do this. I'm sorry, not actors, directors. Directors don't talk to the don't talk to the actors this way. This goes under James Gunn's egotistical, narcissistic personality. And again, this is from Variety, but it says David Cornsweet and James Gunn formed a one-of-a-kind relationship. Yeah, that's one way to that's one way that's one way of of seeing it. As the director and star of Superman, some of which they detailed in the actor's recent GQ cover story. And then it says Gunn auditioned some 400 actors to play his Man of Steel. Cornsweet showed up on the first day of Gunn's search. Sorry, guys. I just want to look at, I just want to try and find, what he said. Okay, yep. So it says Cornsweet said Gunn's yelling is something that would throw a lot of actors off, and understandably so. Yes, because again, this is not what directors do. Usually with a director, they'll say cut, and then they'll pull the actor, and or they'll pull the actor and or or whoever, or whoever, actor, actress, whatever. They'll pull them aside and they'll be like, "Hey, I like when you did that, but what if we try this?" So they wouldn't, they would be, they would be more, polite about it. They wouldn't openly, they wouldn't openly, like humiliate them in front of, the cast and crew. And but this is what Corn Sweat said. He said, the second that happened, I went, okay, this is going to be great because I have no idea what I'm doing. I desperately need a director, the actor admitted. I need a director who knows what they want, and is willing to say out loud without too much politeness and without beating around the bush. If I'm no good, tell me if I'm no good, tell me I'm no good, and then let's work together to make me good. So, and he is obviously, and now David Cornsweat is obviously putting all of it on James Gunn, and he should. He absolutely should, because an actor is only as good as the script they are given. Like, you could have the best actor in the world, but it won't amount to anything if the material sucks. And like, let me give you an example. In fact, I have the perfect example right here. Hayden Christensen as Anakin, in episodes 2 and 3 of Star Wars. When he wasn't talking, he was great. His Anakin's, like, facial expressions, his like, facial expressions, more specifically, when he finally became Darth Vader, and he went around, killing, and he went around, killing everybody, and he turned to the dark side. Like, he was able to capture how he felt just by his facial expressions. And at the end of the day, that's really what acting is about. If you can display how you're feeling, just by your facial expressions without saying a word, that's a good actor right there. And the reason why, and there's a huge difference between a bad actor and bad direction. And I specifically remember hearing that George Lucas even came out and admitted that he can't write, good emotional character dialogue. But my point, the point that I'm trying to make here is Anakin's dialogue in in the Star Wars prequels. Nobody, and you could have, it wouldn't have mattered at the end of the day who got cast in that role. Nobody in the world could have made that sound good. It's just, it's a fact. It's just it's a fact. Excuse me, sorry. It's a fact. It's, at the end of the day, it's just bad writing. It's bad writing and it's bad direction. And nobody in the world could have made that sound good. It's basically the same thing for Gunn. Gunn does not know how to do serious and emotional. And I've talked about this to death. He does not know how to do serious and emotional. Any emotional scenes in Superman are literally just undercut with a joke. Like, there's a part at the end of the movie when Superman is giving this this speech to Lex, talking about, like, at the end of the day, Superman's greatest strength, is obviously, like, his heart, his humanity, his his ability, to care about his ability to love, his ability to care about, what happens to people. And of course, that scene is undercut with a joke. And this and this is what James Gunn does. It's all he knows how to do. He does not know how to do serious and emotional. Everything that James Gunn does is juvenile and stupid. And and part of me, really, really hates to say this, but I really think there's no other way to put it. James Gunn's works really are for the lowest common denominator. They really, really are. Like art to it. There's nothing, there's no art to it. There's nothing original about it. There's no, there's no, there's no, there's no, there's no, like art or emotion or anything behind it. It's just stupid. It's like and you, I really hate to use this as an example, but it's like a donut. It's like, yeah, it might taste good, it might taste good, but at the end of the day, it's awful for you. There's nothing, there's nothing nutritious about a donut, and that's pretty much what Gunn stuff is. Because if you look at, all the if you look at directors, like Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, Robert Eggers, Quentin Tarantino, who else? David Fincher, filmmakers who are just so incredibly good at what they do. Filmmakers who just, who really, really, filmmakers who are just, really, really passionate about what they do, that just really, 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 like know what they're doing. There is nothing, there is nothing original, about what James Gunn does. Nothing at all. And Superman right now, and you should not believe what the media is telling you right now about Superman. The media is trying to spin this movie, like it's somehow, like this massive success. They are trying to spin it, like the movie just surpassed 500 million. And the studio, Warner Brothers Discovery, that is a number that the studio threw out there. That is a number that the studio just threw out there and just literally said, oh yeah, we'll be happy, if the movie makes this much. That is not how business works. That is not how movies work. You need to take into account, I think it was, you need to take into account how much money they spent on marketing, which I'm going to look up right now, actually. Okay, yeah. So you need to take into account the 200 million that they spent on marketing. You need to take into account You need to take into account also the early Amazon screenings. You need to take into account um, you need to take into account the fact and the budget and the budget of the movie as a whole, which um, okay, so the confirmed production budget for Superman 2025 is reportedly as 225 million. And but in all honesty, I think there's a chance that it could be more than that. And um yeah, I think there's a chance that it very well could be more. Um I think there's a chance that it very well could be more because you need to take into account because you also need to take into account that movie tickets cost more today than they did 12 years ago when Man of Steel first came out. And then you also need to take into account um, the fact that movie theaters take 50% of the ticket sales. And um, and another thing you need to take into account, which I don't know why I didn't bring this up earlier, but you also need to take into account the fact that this movie did not sell out. Tickets did not sell out. And you also need to take into account the fact that Jurassic World just recently surpassed 715 million worldwide. You also need to take into account the fact that this movie is bombing overseas, number one. Number two, and I know I brought this up in a previous video, but you also need to take into account the fact that China held literally tens of thousands of screenings for Superman. Literally only 2 people showed up. And some, and I don't remember, I don't remember where I read this, and I apologize, but I remember reading that some theaters overseas are already pulling Superman, from theaters because, because people aren't interested. And in fact, in fact, you know what just became, and this is huge, um, but F1, with Brad Pitt, just became one of the highest grossing movies of the past decade. And this is a movie that was, obviously, an original IP. It has no history. It has, it has no history or anything like that. Superman has history, obviously. Superman has, years and years worth of, of storylines out there. F1 doesn't have any of that. So for F1 to have, this kind of success is huge. It's huge. And I think it goes to show you that not many people are interested in Superman. And again, and I said this, even before Superman came out, nobody asked for Superman to be recast. Nobody. Superman, everybody, the guntards out there like to talk about, how Superman, or, how Man of Steel bombed, and, Man of Steel, and Man of Steel didn't make, the money, that Superman is supposedly making. Man of Steel made almost $1 billion in today's money. Almost $1 billion in today's money. Because again, tickets cost more, today than they did 12 years ago when Man of Steel first came out. James Gunn's Superman is not going to make its money back. It's not. It's not. And that is a fact. That it is just a fact. It is not. And, and at the end of the day, and this is something that I really, really, really need you guys to understand. Even if Superman made $1 billion, even if James Gunn's Superman made $1 billion, it would not save Warner Brothers Discovery, because Warner Brothers Discovery, because their stocks are still in the toilet. Their stocks have been in the toilet now for quite a while. Now, unfortunately, I don't have this piece of information in front of me, because unfortunately this was long before I started making videos. But I specifically remember hearing during the Walter Hamada days, Warner Brothers was already in trouble even before the merger with Discovery. And it goes back to when former Warner Brothers head Toby Emmerich was still at the company, and literally everybody was screaming for his resignation. But when he when he finally stepped down, he actually lied to everybody there about how much money they had. So they were already in trouble even before the merger with Discovery. And we already know that David Zaslav has been looking to sell for quite a while. And that actually brings me to something else that I completely forgot about that I wanted to bring up. I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it, because this was literally just announced. This was literally just announced a couple days ago. Yep. And this comes from Variety. And obviously I will tell you guys, what's wrong with this, obviously. But it says Warner Brothers, Discovery announces post-split company names, executive leadership teams. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, guys. I'm laughing. I'm laughing just because of how incredibly fucking stupid this is. But so David Zaslav apparently thinks it's a good idea for Warner Brothers and Discovery to split into two companies. This will be happening sometime in 2026. I don't know when, but so you have Okay, yep. So Warner Brothers has unveiled the corporate names and senior leadership teams for when the company separates it into two entities, expected to be completed in mid 2026. Okay, so let me let me explain what's wrong with this, because this is ridiculous. Let me remind people here that this is a company that's over $30 million in debt and on the verge of bankruptcy. Splitting into two companies is not going to fix, you know, splitting into two companies is not going to fix anything, because even if you split into two companies, you still have the side that's 30 million, that's, you still have the side, that's literally over 30 million in debt. So, so what is, so it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, what does this accomplish? You know, it's just, it's just, it, it's fucking ridiculous. And I think, and I think it really shows you just what an absolutely bullshit businessman, uh, fucking, David Zaslav is. And it's just, it's ridiculous. And I can tell you right now, when Superman, finishes its, when Superman finishes its, sorry guys, I can't talk today. When Superman, finally finishes, its run, in theaters, when it finally, when it finally, finishes its run, in theaters, I think it's pretty safe to say that this movie is going to end with a pretty low number, because, yes, it just surpassed, 500 million, but it is a fact that movies need to make at least 2.5 times their budget in order to be considered a success. So, and Superman hasn't even begun to break even yet, and that's a fact. Again, you cannot believe what the media tells you. The media, you know, will obviously, try to spin this in your favor, but I am telling you right now, do not believe anything they say. You can't. You just can't. A lot of these companies, Variety especially, like Variety is in bed with Warner Brothers. You know, Variety is, is in bed with Warner Brothers, and maybe at some point, I'll do a video on that. But, but for right now, um, you know, all I can say is just, don't believe anything, don't, don't believe anything they say. And one more thing I want to bring up before I end this video. The numbers, the streaming numbers for, not just Man of Steel, but the streaming numbers, for the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, for, for the, uh, Christopher Reeve, documentary that just came out last year. Um, the Superman story. Views went up for that as well. And of course, the streaming, the streaming numbers for Man of Steel also went up. This is this this is, these people's way of saying, this is what we, this is, these people, this is their way of saying, this is how we want to see Superman. This is their way of saying James Gunn's Superman is not my Superman. Now, and let me see if I can find something on that. Yep, here we are. Man of Steel saw a significant surge in viewership on HBO Max following the theatrical release of the new Superman film. Specifically, Man of Steel experienced a 218% increase in weekly viewership. That's huge. Making it the most watched Superman film on the streaming service last week. And then it says, according to Deadline, this boost in viewership attributed to the renewed interest. Here we are. Here's the other thing I wanted to bring up. While HBO Max hasn't released specific viewing numbers, the week-over-week percentage increases suggest a strong positive response. And then it says the movie also saw viewership increases. The documentary Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, also experienced a substantial 1,206 rise in views, according to Deadline. So you can already tell that, that people, that people are going back, people are going, the audience is going back to what actually worked. They're going back to, Man of Steel. They're going back to, the Christopher Reeve, Superman stuff. I actually debated going back and rewatching Superman Returns at some point, which I find to be very, very underrated. But guys, these are the facts. These are the facts. Nothing, nothing that the media says, nothing that the studio says, will change that. Nothing. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter. That's what's going to matter. But we will see what happens. We will see what happens when Superman reaches the end. When Superman reaches the end of its domestic run, which I really feel like is going to be very, very soon. But again, we will see. But yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know, let me know, your thoughts, down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later, and I will keep you guys updated. Peace.